Welcome, everyone. It's Wednesday, which means it's time for our Midweek Connect. I'm Cherie, and I'm one of the pastors here. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining us from wherever you are. This is just a quick time to connect halfway through the week or any time during the week. If you're watching live with us, please feel free to join the chat in the comments. We've got our pastors there to connect with, pray with you, and answer any questions that you might have. Lastly, we'd love it if you would share this video with your friends and family. It's a great way to invite people to experience the love and grace of Jesus and, again, this awesome online community. Right now, Scott Treadway has a special guest I think you're really going to enjoy.
Welcome to Midweek Connect, where we highlight some stories that are taking place in our own valley that are heartwarming and nice and kind of lift our spirits during this time, or stories that are very helpful. Because we're interviewing Maegan today, I can guarantee it will not be helpful. I'm just kidding. Anyhow.
You're so funny.
Maegan, you are the Executive Director of the Community Mission of Hope. And since this pandemic started, you have been very busy. And it has been quite a journey these last 2 months. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. At the same time, however, you are also dealing with a personal medical situation in your own family. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so at the very beginning of all of this, you know, as everything, we're all making adjustments and everything, whatever. My son has been going through about a year-long process of trying to figure out what's kind of going wrong with him. And so we got a phone call. Literally, it was the day the hospital stopped allowing visitors. And so he was told he needed to come in, but they didn't know why. They just knew something was wrong. They had gotten results of all these tests and that he needed to come in. So I had to go drop him off at the hospital. He's 19, so they wouldn't let me in with him. And I dropped him off not knowing what was wrong with him, right. Just knowing that he had to kind of come in there and stay. So he stayed there for about 5 days. They ended up thinking it was an infection, and so they sent him home with a PICC line. And so we had to change out, I had to learn how to do the flush and all that. And we had to change that out every 6 hours. So we all had our alarms, and we were all, you know, kind of on that or whatever. And then that was actually making him worse. He got a fever and got very ill. So then he went back. They changed the antibiotic. And then a couple weeks later, they said, this isn't helping you. You're not getting better. So we think we want to run more tests. And that's when they called him back in for another 5 days, which was pretty upsetting for him because it's just very lonely and he can't have any visitors and he didn't know what was going on or whatever. So then we found out pretty quick after that time. I think they were targeting it more. But then we got a phone call they let him go. They did all the tests for about 5 days and monitored him, let him go. It was about a week later we got a phone call that he had stage 4 lymphoma.
Now, when that news came out, obviously with your family, it's devastating. Went out to the church family and the broader Community Mission of Hope community, and there's just this, kind of shock. He's a strong young man, 19 years old, and to get that diagnosis, stage 4 lymphoma, stage 4 cancer, it's shocking. But the good news, I guess, is that it is treatable, right? And he's in the middle of his treatment right now. Yeah,
he's doing really good. Originally we thought, because the majority of his symptoms were in his back. He had back pain. And so we just thought, because it had just developed on their scans, that it was rather new, and maybe he would just have, because my dad also has lymphoma.
Yes.
And so he's just getting the targeted treatment. So we thought, when they told us, we were like, oh, great. He's just going to get targeted. They'll probably just shoot it right in the thing and he'll be fine. And then when they said stage 4, it's spread. It's in his spleen and a little bit in his lung. It was devastating. But pretty quickly after, he has a great oncologist. And she just said, you might feel better actually after, you start chemo.
Yeah.
It might actually make you feel better and not worse. And so I was kind of holding on to that, but also I had never heard of that. So I was kind of like, are you sure? But holy cow, you can't hold him back right now. Like, he is stronger than he's been in a year.
Yeah.
And so he's during treatment and it's scary, and he has a couple days where they're hard, but he's doing better than ever. So people are reaching out, and embracing and asking, how's he doing? And I just keep telling people he's doing better than he was before, so it's
well, that's good
really
news.
amazing.
And certainly, as everybody is saying, this is treatable. He goes through the process, and he should be in good shape. So we're certainly praying in that direction. And you're bearing that burden as a family, as you're also bearing the burdens of the need of the community. So,
right.
We are very grateful for you and your teams, because this has been difficult. This This is a global crisis that hit in an instant.
Right.
It wasn't the slow kind of recession that got deeper. It's in an instant. There's lockdowns and loss of job, and here we are, the Community Mission of Hope, which we launched during the last major crisis, the Great Recession, is here to help. And immediately there's this wave of new families that are in need. But as is the case with most crises, what typically happens is nonprofits who rely on donations, typically in a crisis, those donations dry up, but the needs skyrocket.
Yep.
But we've experienced kind of a unique story here. The needs skyrocketed, but we've got this amazing core of people and this increasing core of donors that is really writing this incredible story. So let's talk about the need. As soon as this happened, what happened at the Community Mission of Hope?
Yeah, so at the very beginning, the first thing we lost were our volunteers.
Right.
So we are a volunteer-led organization, and we are run with those who are typically retired, so they fall in that 65 and older category.
I need to say that.
Amazing people. And then adults with special needs. This is kind of their way of kind of coming out with their worker, and they come out and they help, and they're an incredible crew too. And so we lost both those groups right away. The good news is that we just have a couple kind of new hires at Community Mission of Hope, and we had one over here and that wasn't working, and so we shifted, and I feel like everybody was set in their place at just the right time. And so our warehouse coordinator, Courtney, she was like that day, she just got it set up to where there's a schedule online. You can volunteer for this day for this many hours, so we didn't have to, who do you need? I don't know, come in, or we would have too many people show up and say, we can't use all of you, that kind of thing. So she just stepped right up and began coordinating all of that.
So she had already kind of prepared the way
Yep.
for a more organized situation with volunteers and help. And so when this hit, you were ready.
We were ready to go.
That's great.
So, and then we had the stores typically give us their extras, and that stopped right away because as everyone knows, that you'd go in and the shelves were empty.
Yeah, right.
And so we stopped getting donations.
Schools as well, right?
Yeah, and the school drives, church food drives, we had a lot actually scheduled. We schedule them throughout the year to keep the food coming in, and a lot of those were canceled. And so we just were kind of looking at our team going, the need is going to increase, and how do we meet that need with what we have? And so it was very much we were assessing how much food do we have left, we're good for this amount of time, and then after that, what are we going to do, and this kind of thing. So it's kind of like, we were trying to, it was hard to project where we were going to be in a month and what we were going to have and not have and that kind of thing. But pretty quickly, churches got creative. Rancho held a drive-by food drive. And so people just drove up and just dropped off their food and went on, and there was no contact there. So that helped a lot. And then we also had grocery stores once they kind of leveled out and saw, and actually we kind of got extra at the beginning because they were over ordering some things.
Oh, I see.
And so it was kind of like, it was like all of us are all off balance, so it was like this weird, we have 5,000 cartons of milk. Okay, give them out, get rid of them. So it's like, it was kind of this thing. And then of course, Pachanga, pretty soon after that, they closed their doors and they just said, do you guys want
food.
All of our food? I mean, tons of food from all the restaurants and everything. And they brought truckloads, and I know they brought truckloads to other organizations too that could use them. And so that
We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of food.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
extraordinary. Now, there's this great kind of creative way that provision is coming. There are creative ways that you are using staff, and we were bringing some Rancho Church staff over there as well as the team that you had, and some faithful volunteers as well. You're managing to put it together as the need is growing. So what did it look, on the ground, at the warehouse, the food distribution site, when there can be really no contact, but people are in desperate need? What does that kind of look like?
So the first couple days, it was like texting the team who can be here at what time in the early morning. What's the earliest we can all get here? Because people are coming for food. We didn't close, but we don't know what we're doing. So it was like each morning in that beginning where the rules kept changing too, and the guidelines kept changing. The city of Temecula, huge shout out to them. They were totally supportive. They kept in contact with us. They helped us, kind of figure out what we could and couldn't do. And we're constantly asking what we needed. And so that was amazing. But we would just kind of huddle and we'd be like, okay,
what does today look like?
Here's the new rule we've been given. And so now we are going to do X, Y, Z. So pretty quickly, again, Courtney and Allison and Donna, the four of us just rallied and we just said, okay, what does this look like? So we began doing a drive-through through our parking lot, and we have a station kind of out there. And in the beginning, normally we have the client come in, they fill out paperwork. We use that as an opportunity to get to know what other needs they have besides just food.
Right. Yeah. More of the case management, the whole family. Right.
Yeah. And how can we kind of help you, kind of get back on your feet type thing instead of just here's a handout. So we waived all of that. It was like, if anyone needed food, you can just come drive up and we'll put it in your car. That's really just how it was. And then eventually, pretty quickly, I would say, we had, like you said, some Rancho staff came over. And so we had our little iPads out there. We got some iPads. And now it's like when you drive up and now we take your name and now we register you just like how we did before. We send the packet home. They come back with it filled out, that kind of thing. And Donna, who's our administrative, kind of works in that area. So she's running a virtual case management office. So she's like, as they get food, then she assigns them a case manager. They call them, make sure there's no other need. And then when people call an email into, she'll kind of like book them with their own case manager. So case management is still very much happening during this whole thing. Yeah. It's just more online, through emails and phone calls and stuff. So people are still getting help that way too as well. But yeah, so there's a drive-through. The 2 weeks where it was pouring down rain was so much fun. I'm telling you, we have
some sarcasm.
But I will tell you this. I really walked up every day and was like, this is the most glorious thing I've ever seen, because you have volunteers and staff and they're drenched and they're like, okay, I'm going to get ponchos. Who needs a poncho? I mean, it was like we just constantly had to just kind of ebb and flow and everyone had a positive attitude. They were just like, how can we serve? And I wasn't out there in the pouring rain, but they were, and they'd come in, their socks were soaking wet and their shoes were soaking wet, and everyone was happy to do it. It was just like the coolest thing. So it was like every time there was a challenge, there was no like, oh my gosh, how are we going to, I just was sitting back and like, I just love these people. I just love their heart to serve. And
that's pretty cool, because I remember that time, it just hit, the stay-at-home orders hit, and it's raining, and there's a lot of understandable complaining. Like, okay, we got the pandemic, we're staying at home, and it's raining, and people are just kind of down. And that's totally understandable, right?
Yep.
And not to shame anybody who's complaining about the rain, but then there's your team that is just going right through this rain, making it happen and serving people in need. Yeah. And that's just really a beautiful thing. It
was awesome. And it is that thing where it's like, obviously none of us want this. Yeah. But every day I was coming to work, I think just more grateful and more just impressed by people's hearts to give and to serve one another. And so it was, from my vantage point and my perspective, it was a huge blessing to be at work with those people and those attitudes, and just how can we get it going? How can we do it? And everyone just willing to jump in and happy to do it. So it's been a fun environment, honestly, to serve with. And then restaurants started hearing about like what we were doing, and they said, hey, we want to serve you guys. So we have like Islands in Temecula will bring over food once a week for our volunteers and for our families, like prepared individual meals. That's cool. And we have, like a ton of places like Chick-fil-A and Panera who are just like, how can we serve your So we're like getting spoiled. Literally, we're like, who's feeding us today? Like our whole team is just like, cool. And it's so cool. And we have like this time of prayer in the morning, our morning meetup, where we just kind of get to stand 6 feet apart. We have a huge warehouse, so there's room. So we just stand 6 feet apart, and we just get to just pray over the morning and just connect with everyone and just remember, we're staying 6 feet apart, wear your masks, blah, blah, blah. And Chick-fil-A is feeding us today. Yay! So it's great. Been it's been really cool.
That's fun. Is there one story that kind of sums up this whole season for the Community Mission of Hope?
I think there's a lot of stories, a lot of little pockets and relationships that have been made stronger and built, and just a community of rallying and unity. And, I could go on, but there was one from the kind of early stages where I think in the beginning there was just some panic too. And then, a lot of people, when we did lose those volunteers, we had a lot of people kind of step up that we didn't know that just, again, they signed up through our, the organized new way of volunteering, and they would just show up every day, and we were just getting to know these people. And one of the gals, and that's how, for some people, they dealt with it. They were like, I can't stay home. I can't just sit, and think about this all day, and I really need to get out and serve. And so we saw those people, and they were grateful to have a place to do some good and to go to every day. And so their friendships and connections have just been a beautiful thing to kind of just watch that too. Yeah. But I remember this one day early on, one of those gals that had come in to do that, because she did not want to stay home, she went out to put food into the car of someone that had driven up, and they knew each other. They were coworkers who had both lost their job. And so the one who was pulling up to receive food just looked at her coworker and just said, she started crying, and she just saw a friendly face and said, I don't know what to do. I lost my job. And she said, I know, I don't either. And she's like, but we'll give you food, we'll give you whatever you need. And so it was just a beautiful, and they both just kind of cried. Like, they both were scared. One was a mom and one wasn't, and it was like the mom was scared of how am I going to feed my kids? And her coworker was kind of there just like, we got you, and so I just think that's just a beautiful story of just, we all are playing our part. We're all finding ourselves on different sides of this, but I think unity and keeping that connection going, that human spirit, is just so important through this. So
absolutely. So tell us a story about a plumber in town who also stepped up to help.
Yeah, so just again, like what I was saying, just every day it was just something cool, just to get to witness. And so Big B's Plumbing, shout out to Big B's, they just showed up, and they were just like, we've heard about you and how can we help? And we happened to have a leak like in one of our bathrooms. And so they just fixed it for free, but they wanted to do more. And so they actually put us up on their website as a place that you could, they put our website and our donation kind of button and they encouraged people to give online. They offered to pick up food from anybody who couldn't leave their house but wanted to donate food. They said, we'll go out and we'll pick it up. And then they came and they kind of they interviewed us, and they put that out on their social media and stuff. So it was really cool. It was, again, just another circumstance of like people just showing up and just rallying and supporting. And it was just constant. Like, it was just not stopping. So yeah,
that's great.
Big B's for all your plumbing needs.
Non-paid mentioned.
Yeah.
But really, the community has stepped up, whether it's the city of Temecula or companies, restaurants. Everybody just wanted to do their part. Yeah. And you reported something very fun by text the other day, which we talked about in church, that during this period last year, we had about $20,000 in donations. Yeah. During the same period this year, $100,000 in donation. Yeah. And that's astounding, because I'm talking to a lot of other nonprofits and churches who are really struggling, and their donations are down, and so we're trying to help them out as well. But the community has really rallied around Community Mission of Hope, yeah. and so we are our resource, but the need is growing and growing. Yeah. So CMOH.net if you'd like to donate.
Yes, please.
Because not only are we feeding the community, but at the same time, you're onboarding 4 new houses for transitional housing. Yeah. So you have dealt with a lot. You've got your son's medical needs. You've got this pandemic that, of course, we're all kind of dealing with the implications of that. You and your team are feeding this valley. 4 homes are being onboarded to help people in that transition who need housing. And that's a lot to bear. Yeah. And, you're a tough lady, but I'm sure you've had your moments. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. You are human.
What? No, it's fine.
I know you don't want to admit it, but I really, from the bottom of my heart, want to tell you how thankful I am for you. You're a great part of this team. You are leading the community in such an amazing way during a hard time. You're rallying the community together to serve, to give, to be generous to one another. And I know it's not about you. You will reflect, that praise to your teams. But on behalf of this whole valley, we are thankful for you, the Community Mission of Hope, your staff, your volunteers, because what you're doing is really shining the glory of God to people who Jesus himself came to serve and to love. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
And we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
It's so good to be able to connect with so many of you throughout the week. As we close today, I just want to remind you of just a couple things. I hope you join us this coming Sunday for Church Online. All of our campuses, Temecula, Murrieta, and Espanol have live streaming services. Our kids program, they're also online. Just visit rancho.tv for more info. Also, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, Rancho United, so you don't miss anything from us. And we hope to see you again next week.